So, Mr. O'Sullivan, we are now at page 20, at paragraph 21 of your affidavit.
Uh-huh.
Could you explain how you came to be appointed as the Group Executive Aviation Security at Airports Company South Africa, AXA, in early 2001?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I was working in the Border Police, and at the same time I was working in the Border Police, I was a director of Tourism Johannesburg, and I was also a director of an entity which I had formed called Johannesburg's Big Five Tourist Destinations. And I was also a director of the Tourism Business Council of South Africa. And the reason for that was I was involved in the tourist industry in what we call tourism plant. And I'm talking about hotels and properties with a tourist inclination on them. And while I was working at the airport in the Border Police, I had recognized some issues involving tourists that were getting victims of crime after arriving in the country and having issues outside the airport. So I sat with the tourism police unit that I was a member of, and I pulled our resources. I said, guys, we've got to do something to stop this nonsense. So what we started doing, we involved the permanent police members. We were a reservist unit of about 35 members, but there were permanent members at the airport as well, Chairman. And we involved them, and we sat down and we had a think tank. And we came up with the idea of swapping shifts and moving things around so that we could make the airport a safe environment. And that fitted in quite nicely with the other activities we were involved in, which was to prevent human trafficking. So what happened was we needed additional facilities because there were not some facilities that we needed. So I made representation to the general manager of the airport, a gentleman by the name of Bongani Maseko. And I said, Bongani, we need some additional facilities here. Can you help us? And he said, no, we'll have to have a meeting and what. So we had another meeting and they said, no, this is going to cost money. I'll have to get it approved by the board. And he asked me to come and do a presentation to the board of AXA as to why we wanted these changes at the airport. And the board approved the plan and we implemented those changes. And then about 3 or 4 months later, we were able to demonstrate that we'd taken crime down at the airport by 35% in 1 year. And then I was approached by the chairman of AXA, a gentleman by the name of Mashuda Romano. And he said to me he wanted to have a meeting with me and Dalla Oma. Now,
Is that Minister
at the
Dalla
time,
Oma?
he was a minister of transport.
Okay, so if you could just maybe mention him in his official
Okay.
capacity.
Thank you. I knew Minister Oma from previous engagements with him because there had been some problems with, at that stage, he was a Minister of Justice. And while he was Minister of Justice, we'd had some problems with the policing at Johannesburg Central Police Station. There was some leakage with suspects, where suspects would come into the cells, police, the magistrate's court, and they would have to go upstairs.
I'm sorry to interject, Mr. O'Sullivan, but I am now referring to your time at AXA.
Yes.
We've passed the time as a reservist
Sorry.
at
So then,
Worcester Square.
Mashuda Romano said to me that he wanted me to meet with Minister Dalla Oma. So, and he said the reason he wanted me to meet with him was he wanted me, they were going to create a position on the board of Airports Company South Africa. And that position would be Group Executive Aviation Security. And he had given an undertaking to Minister Omar that when he was appointed chairman of AXA, Minister Omar had asked him to ensure that if he made any new appointments at a senior level within AXA, that the appointments should not be white people. So he then introduced me to who I already knew, Minister Omar. And we had a coffee at the airport. And he explained to Minister Omar the things that we had been able to achieve with bringing down crime at the airport. And then both he and Minister Omar invited me to apply for a new position, which they were going to create, which was this position, Group Executive Aviation Security.
Did you interview for the position?
Yes, Chairman, they published an article, what do you call it, an advertisement in the Sunday Times, and they told me I would have to apply for it, which I did. And I was shortlisted with 2 other persons, and then there was an interview, and they took a decision to appoint me.
At paragraph 22, you talk about the normal hiring process. Is that what you're referring to after you were invited to apply for this newly created role?
That's correct, Jim.
Which coincidentally, you also were the successful candidate.
That's correct.
Okay. What was your mandate at AXA?
My mandate was before change. Sorry.
There are 2 hands here, Honorable Skosana, Honorable Malem.
Thank you, Chair. It's very short. I wanted to find out the issue of parallel. What do you mean parallel? There was you were approached before the job was advertised, am I right?
They told me that they intended to create such a position, and they would be placing an advertisement in the Sunday Times, and that when they place the advertisement in the Sunday Times, they would like me to apply for it because they liked the work that I had done at the airports with the border police.
Yeah, if I hear you well, you said that they didn't want to appoint a white person, am I right? That's what you said earlier?
So, no, I didn't say they didn't want to appoint a white person. I said that when Mashuda Romano was made the chairman of Airports Company, he had agreed with the Minister of Transport that he would not appoint a white person into any senior position on the board of AXA.
Right. Now, my last one on that, clarity on this parallel. When you said to the evidence leader, when she asked you about the parallelism of that advertisement, I didn't hear you well. What is parallel there on that? There was another candidate, or what was it?
Don't remember using the word parallel, but there were other candidates and there were interviews.
So it was a formality. The job was created for you.
No, Chairman, the job wasn't created for me. They had a panel of people that did the interview.
It disclosed that the minister and the chairman, Ramashuda, approached you before that job was advertised.
My understanding is that they'd taken a decision to advertise the position, but they hadn't advertised it, and the advertisement was coming out either the next week or the week after. So,
no, my question is, did you disclose during the interview that the minister, Tula Omar, and Ramano Mashudu, that they've approached you, that they are going to create a group executive for aviation and security at AXA?
Yes, I did disclose it in the interview. In fact, the interview panel included the chairman.
The same person who asked you that you advertise that?
It's correct.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Malim.
No, Chair, thanks. When the advert was taken out for this position, what were the requirements in terms of qualifications?
I can't remember, Chairman. We're going back over a quarter of a century. I didn't keep a copy of the advertisement.
Do you have a degree or equivalent yourself?
No, that wasn't a requirement.
Do you have a degree or an equivalent? You.
No,
So that post will not, Group Executive Aviation and Security will not have required a degree.
no, there was no degree required in the advertisement.
It was designed to suit you.
I don't agree with that. The advertisement came out the week after I had that meeting.
Who was in the panel? How many were they and who were they?
I think there were 4 or 5 directors of Airports Company, the chairman and 3 or 4 other directors.
Was there no one representing the minister at the panel?
Chairman, I can't remember. It's I think 26 years ago or 25 years ago. But there were people sat there. There were directors of the Airports Company, and there was the chairman of the Airports Company, and I think the group executive HR was there.
Mr. Paul O'Sullivan, everything good about you, you remember it. For sure, you even remember the flight number you came with here. But if something is not of your favor or interest, all of a sudden we're told, yes, it's 26 years ago, it's 30 years ago. But you have detailed every achievement you have made. You remember everything that suits you, that is good about you. There is a panel, you're being interviewed for such a senior position. Was there no one there representing a minister?
Chairman, when I went in for the interview, I didn't ask, where are you from, where are you from, where are you from, where are you from? There were 4 or 5 people there. I can remember the name of Mashudu Romano. There was another gentleman who was a white person. He was a director of the Airports Company representing Aeroporti di Roma, who was a shareholder. And to my knowledge, there was somebody there, but I don't remember who was representing the other shareholder, which was the government of South Africa. And then there was the HR director. And that's it. I can't, I mean.
Did you have any qualification or any practical experience that has to do with aviation?
I've been a pilot for 40 years and been a pilot for 40 years.
For 40 years?
Yes.
So you are a qualified pilot?
40 years.
I'm asking, are you a qualified pilot?
I've been a qualified pilot for 40 years.
You went to school to be a pilot?
Yes. I own my own aircraft.
I live that. That I understand. But school, because those people of pilots go to school and then they have to do some hours. Have you done all of that?
I've done all of that.
And then you had security experience, because it's aviation and security.
I have that experience. I went on a course in the United States to learn specifically about aviation security, because I wanted to understand. There's an organization called ICAO, which is the International Civil Aviation Organization. And they have a training center where they train people and they qualify them as aviation security specialists.
So will you be able to give us a certificate of that aviation security that you went to America for,
if I can,
and your pilot certificate?
Well, I can show you my pilot's license right now.
No, not license. School, the school. Where you attended school, obvious, when you finish, they give you a qualification. Will you attach it? Will we get it tomorrow?
If I can, what do you mean if tomorrow? If I can find it?
Two things, please try to find them.
Chairman,
One of aviation security institution that you attended to in America, and the qualification, not license, because there is a certificate that you get, which will tell us if where did you go and do your training, and then how many hours did you serve before you qualified to become a pilot.
Chairman, I wouldn't have any, I didn't fly to Cape Town with all these documents, knowing that I would be asked these type of questions from 40 years ago. The reality of the situation is, and there is my pilot's license. I have a pilot's license. I didn't buy it on the street corner. I did my training. I have my own aircraft. I fly my own aircraft on a regular basis. You know,
I wouldn't know if you bought it at your own street corner if you don't give me the qualification. The ticket doesn't say anything. When it comes to academic qualifications, that ticket you are showing me doesn't mean anything. I want certified documents that come from a recognizable institution that confirms that you went training to become a pilot and you passed the certain levels of the requirements, and the institution in America to check if that institution is recognizable institution and its qualification is recognizable. And we need both, even if it's not tomorrow, Chair. We need to, because here is a post, we're being told he can't remember what were the requirements. He doesn't have a degree or post-matric qualification. It says he went to aviation security to some institution and all of that. We need to see all of that to see if indeed there was some element of qualification closer to this post that was specifically created for him.
Honorable Nomvalo.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. No, I just want to confirm one or two things. So, Mr. O'Sullivan, you said you were approached by Ramano and Mr. Dula Oma, correct?
no, I didn't say that. I said I was approached by Mr. Romano, who wanted a meeting,
Ramano and
who wanted a meeting with the
Yes.
minister. And
So
he
they
arranged a
said
meeting, and
the-
then I met them.
Bonani says they are not related.
No, I know he's not talking about the Ramano we have here. But what I want to check is, so then they persuaded you to apply, correct? They said you must consider
They invited me to apply.
to apply.
Yes.
And then were you vetted before you were
Pardon me?
considered for the job? Were you vetted?
I don't know what their internal mechanisms were, but I'm assuming they carried out the normally.
No, my question, I think, should start like this. The first job that you did was being a detective at the airport, which was a national key point, correct?
Correct.
The airport was the national key point. What was your responsibility
Worked in the border police there.
as a police?
Yes.
Were you vetted?
No.
So you worked as a police at the airport, which was a national key point, without being vetted.
They may have vetted me. I don't know, but I was a reservist.
So you had no a clearance certificate.
My knowledge, not.
Okay, no, thank you, Chair.
Honorable James, you will be the last and we.
Thank you, Chair. I'll save my questions for later, but I just need clarity. In 1997, when you got this paid job, was it as the group executive or was it at border control management?
I didn't hear what job?
The job when you started, you said earlier on in 1997 was your paid job at the airport.
All right.
You were dealing with drug-related trafficking and working at border control. I'm trying to understand, was it a paid job via SAPS or was it this group executive job?
Then no, Chair. I was a police reservist.
You were police reservist
I was a police reservist at the airport.
working at border control.
Border police, not border control.
Border police.
Border control was carried out by the immigration department.
So you were police reservist responsible for drug trafficking.
No, Chairman, I wasn't a police service responsible for drug trafficking. I was a police reservist in the border police. And we were involved in a lot of activities, which included human trafficking, drug
He's saying,
prevention. It was crime prevention.
okay, I'm going to leave it for later. And then also, just to make 100% certain, you have no other qualifications, nothing. You don't have any law qualifications, engineering, nothing,
No, completely unqualified.
completely. Nothing in law, nothing in engineering.
That's correct.
I'll get back to this later. Matric, do you have a matric?
We don't have matric where I went to school. That's a South African qualification.
Anything equivalent to a matric?
Of course I have.
What is that?
We call it O levels and A levels, but I mean, we're talking about 40 years ago, so, or 50 years ago.
You were group executive. No qualifications.
Of course, I had qualifications. With all respect, Chairman, you know, regarding, and by the way, I was also at some point a aviation security auditor. I was a person that carried out aviation security audits. So I had all that training and all those skills.
I'm going to leave it at that, Mr. O'Sullivan. You must remember what you told this committee now when I come back later. And this is why it was very important for you to have a CV as part of your statement. Then we wouldn't have been having this.
I was there.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. O'Sullivan, just for purposes of my clarity, you've just testified that you have no degree.
That's correct.
Okay. Earlier, you testified that you have an electrical engineering degree.
No, I never said I had a degree. I had a high national certificate, which is just one step below the degree.
So you do have a post O levels qualification.
Absolutely, yes.
And what is that qualification?
Engineering, electronic engineering.
Electronic engineering.
It's a high national certificate.
Where did you obtain it?
Manchester,
Manchester Technikon.
correct.
Okay. So electrical, Manchester Technikon. Electrical, it's called electrical engineering.
Electrical and electronic engineering,
Okay, and that is your post O and A level qualification.
correct.
Okay. We were at paragraph 23 of your statement. And there it reads, I had carte blanche to make radical changes and to review all security contracts in place. My question that I had posed to you was, what was your mandate at AXA and what did your initial assessment reveal regarding the security? Perhaps let me take it one step at a time. What was your mandate at AXA?
My mandate at AXA, Chairman, was to improve security, not just at Johannesburg Airport, but at all the airports.
And what did your initial assessment, once you joined, what did that reveal regarding security at all the airports in South Africa?
My initial assessment, Chair, revealed that the security wasn't up to the standard it should be, and that there was corruption within the service provider environment. For example, bribes were being paid to AXA employees to sign worksheets to say that people had performed certain jobs that hadn't been performed, and equipment tenders were going out in a corrupt fashion. I assessed all of this. I then went to speak to the chairman. I explained to the chairman that we had these problems. He said we need to fix it, and that was what we did. We went about to fix it.
Could you elaborate on what you mean by having carte blanche to make radical changes?
Okay, so for example, they had just completed a tender before I joined for the replacement of all the archway metal detectors and the pre-flight screening equipment of passengers. Where you put your bag on a conveyor belt, it passes through. At the other end, they can have a picture and see what's in your bag. And the replacement of all that equipment at 10 airports, I can't remember the exact figure now, but it was millions of rand. And when I joined, in the first month I was there, I was brought the tender documents and told we need to place this order now. And you have to sign this that we're going to buy all this equipment. So I said, okay, let me have a look at all that. And I asked some questions. And I had a problem because the lowest bidder wasn't the contractor that they planned to issue the contract to. And there was a difference of several million rand. So I then decided to look into that further. And I found the lowest bidder. And I asked him, you tendered for this equipment, but they've disqualified you from receiving the contract because your equipment doesn't do exactly what the specification says. And the tenderer told me, he said, no, our equipment can't do that because the specification has been written for the winning tender's bidded equipment. In other words, it would appear that the winning tender contractor had assisted AXA to write the specification because it would suit the equipment that he would have been supplying. And when I saw this, I went and had another look at the document, the specification. And then I started doing a comparison between all the tenders who submitted a tender. And I found out that, in fact, only one person could have won that tender, and that was the highest price tender. So I went back to Mashudu Romano and I said, we have a problem here. My suggestion would be that we retender, and instead of tendering exactly what the equipment should be, we should retender on the basis of what the equipment should be able to do. In other words, it should comply with these relevant international standards, and it should be guaranteed, and it shouldn't break down, and blah, blah, blah. And he agreed with that. So we retendered, and I think we saved some in the region of 5 or 6 million rand on that tender. And the same applied to the manpower contract. We had 10 airports, and for some reason, all of the security employees for the 10 airports were from one contractor. And when I analyzed the scope of the tender and the work that was being performed, I found discrepancies. And the discrepancies I found was I would go there, for example, out of hours, not during normal working hours. I would go there outside normal working hours. And we had the tender documents, so we knew how many security personnel we should expect to find at each security checkpoint in the airport. And when I went to validate how many people were there, every time I went there, I found that there were people missing, which meant they were the contractors who had won the contract were doing what they call short posting. So you might have a security checkpoint where there's supposed to be 5 people on duty, and there were only 2 people on duty. But the airports company was paying for 5 people to be there. So over a period of, I think, 2 months or 3 months, I think we sent 22 breach letters, or 21 or 22 breach letters to the contractor. And the breach letter stipulated what the tender said, what the contract said, and it said, by the way, on this date at this time, we found the following, and we listed the defects in the supply. Then what we did, we carried out an audit of the personnel that they had employed. And the specification stated that the workforce had to consist of a certain grade of security officer. You have what they call grade A, grade B, grade C, grade D, grade E, like this. And at certain positions, the person would have to be a grade C. At certain position, it would have to be a grade B. At another position, it would be acceptable to have a grade D. And when we did an audit of the security staff that they had, not only did we find people missing from their posts, and they weren't missing because they'd gone away, they were missing because they'd never been there in the first place. And then we found that their qualifications were not in keeping, and some of them were not even registered as security guards at all.
Okay. To that end, you actually, in your affidavit at paragraph 23 and 24, mention a specific contract and contractor as an example.
That's correct, Chairman. A company called Kusalani Security and Risk Management.
How did you deal with that contract?
This is the company that supplied approximately 5,000 heads around the 10 airports. And we issued them with 2021 breach letters. And the breach letters we kept issuing more or less every 2 or 3 days. There was a breach letter being issued. So I was really getting on top of these people. And then I happened to be in the United States when 911 took place. And I was shocked at what could happen if aviation security didn't go according to plan. So when I came back, I met with the chairman and I said, look here, I think what we don't need in South Africa right now is a 911 or something of that equivalent. We need to get rid of this contractor, and instead of having one contractor doing all the airports, my suggestion is that we have a different contractor at every airport so we don't have all our eggs in one basket. The chairman agreed, and then we started a process to cancel the contract and to bring in new contractors.
Okay, following the cancellation of the Kusalani contract, you opened a criminal docket.
Correct.
What did the investigation uncover regarding payments to senior? Why did you open a criminal docket?
We opened the criminal docket because, Chairman, I invited the contractor to supply us with proof of their VAT registration and proof of their VAT payments, and they refused to supply it. So I opened the criminal docket not only for that, but some of the employees of the contractor had come to me privately and told us that their employer was deducting UIF, pension contributions, and when they asked for a certificate to show that their pensions had been paid up, they could not provide such a certificate. So I opened a docket alleging fraud in respect of VAT, UIF, and pension contributions. And the investigation resulted in the CEO of the company going on trial, and he ended up getting 5 years in prison.
We are at paragraph 25 of your statement. What did this investigation for which you opened dockets uncover regarding the payments to senior AXA employees?
Okay, so Chairman, we found that within the security environment, the security department of Airports Company, we found 1 or 2 people that approached me, and they said to me, listen, you know, I even took sworn statements from them because they said on such and such a date, they were given an envelope which they had to pass on to this person, and so on and so forth. So I went to the chairman, Mashudu. I said, Mashudu, we have a problem here. We need to get into this. He authorized us to appoint an outside company to come in and do an investigation. And that company, we pointed them in the right direction. That company provided evidence of bribes that were being paid to AXA employees to sign off worksheets that people had been at work when they hadn't been at work, what we call ghost employees. And the bribes have been paid. So all those people ended up getting suspended and then dismissed. In those days, Chairman, Act 12 of 2004, which is the Prevention and Combating of Corrupt Activities Act, didn't exist. It had only been promulgated in 2004. So we just dismissed them based on the fact that they were dishonest.
In the same vein that you speak about what the investigations uncovered, you also mentioned the late National Commissioner, Police Commissioner, Mr. Jackie Silebi.
Yes.
Could you expand on why you mentioned him particularly at this paragraph?
Yes. So, Chairman, I mentioned Jackie Silebi because after we took a decision to cancel the contract, and when I say we, I'm talking about myself and Mashuda Romano. And then what Mashuda Romano did was he called an urgent executive board meeting where the whole executive group of AXA endorsed our decision before we issued the cancellation letter. After we issued the cancellation letter, strange things started happening. The first thing that happened was I got a phone call from the then Deputy National Commissioner of Police, a gentleman by the name of Andre Price. And he wanted an urgent meeting between myself and Jackie Silebi and himself at the airport. And the purpose of that meeting was to inform me that the National Key Points Act was going to be changed. And the change to the National Key Points Act would result in national key points no longer falling under the army, but they would fall under the police. And therefore, they did not want me to cancel any contracts until they had changed the National Key Points Act. And when we discussed that internally in AXA, we considered that request to be unlawful. We asked for it to be put in writing. It was put in writing, and then we still took a decision to cancel the contract because they were asking for us not to cancel the contract, yet the contractor was in constant breach. He wasn't able. To give you an example, Chairman.
Mr. O'Sullivan, I'm sorry to interrupt
Yep.
you. We're just running behind with time. My question was quite specific, and it had to do with the late National Commissioner.
Yeah.
Could you just expand specifically on what you uncovered in the investigation in relation to him?
So, Chairman, what I uncovered was that he was a friend of the CEO of Kusalani Security, a very close friend. And I didn't obtain any prima facie evidence at that stage, but I had received information that he was also a friend of the head of the security at the airport, and that together they were looking after the contractor, who in turn was looking after them. So after we issued the cancellation letter, strange things started happening. The first incident that took place was that somebody tried to shoot me. And I had a bullet hole in my car. In fact, I had a small chunk out of my thigh. The bullet actually singed my thigh and smashed the window and went through the door. And the same night, Mashuda Romano had a house in Northcliffe. And the same night, he was out at a function, and two guys arrived in a motor vehicle without number plates. And they tried to go into his property, but his bodyguards were there, and a shootout took place with the bodyguards. And then I said to Mashudu, I don't think you should stay at home until we get this contract dealt with and out of the way. Oh, I should mention 2 days or 3 days before that, Kusalani Security had launched an urgent application in the High Court to prevent the to interdict the cancellation. And in that application, they also indicated that they had been informed by the Commissioner of Police that the police would be taking over the security management of the national key points. And the national key points, we had 10 airports, but then only 3 of them were national key points. And I had become the national key points officer for the owner of the national key points, which was AXA. So
Mr. O'Sullivan, do you have a copy in these documents? We don't have a copy of that court order.
so unfortunately, Chair, I tried to get a copy of that court order, and I think I phoned the attorneys, I think either in your presence or advocate presence, and they said that they would look for it, but it's like 25 years ago.
Do you remember what the outcome of the order was?
The order was that their urgent application was dismissed with costs and the contract was cancelled.
I have here an article from a newspaper from 23 years ago. Airport security boss faces VAT fraud. What it says is that the Kusalani Security settled with the airport and its contract ran its course, but it was not renewed. What is your comment to that?
No, the contract was cancelled. In fact, we brought in a number of other companies. And to my memory, one of the companies was Fidelity. There was another company called Protea Security. And I still remember somebody accusing me of being a shareholder of Protea Security, which at the time was owned by Tokyo Sequali Velapanda Group. And we replaced Kusalani completely and they were gone from the airports.
Okay. I would like to then bring you back to my question before we went down the road of talking about the cancellation of the contract. It's still unclear how the late former national commissioner features in this specific contract. But to that end, I can take you to paragraph 26 of your statement.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Before paragraph 26,
yes.
You mentioned that he was one of the people that where you conducted an investigation and you found that he'd been somewhat involved with Kusalani.
Correct.
At paragraph 26, you then mentioned that whilst Mr. Mashudu Ramano was in hiding during October 2001, which is the incident that you've just described, that there was a shootout outside of his house.
Sorry,
Officials.
Chair,
Yes.
that's not correct. The shootouts had taken place before then, and then he was in hiding.
Yes.
So
That's what I'm intimating,
Yes,
that
okay.
whilst he was in hiding after the shootout.
after the shootout.
Yes.
Yes.
Whilst he was in hiding after the shootout, during October 2001, police officials reporting to Silebi tracked Romano to the hotel he was staying at. Could you expand on that statement?
Yes, Chairman. He was arrested and detained as allegedly being an illegal immigrant. And on the day he was arrested, I didn't know he'd been arrested. In the afternoon, I think in those days, the Mail and Guardian used to come out on a Friday or Thursday. I can't remember exactly what day it is. But on the day in question, I got a phone call from a journalist at the Mail and Guardian who told me, by the way, you know, we're going to ask you some questions. We're running a story tomorrow. And I said, okay, what are the questions? He said, well, first of all, do you know that your chairman is an illegal immigrant? And I said, no, he can't possibly be an illegal immigrant. I know his family because after I became friends with him, which we did, I had flown to his mother's funeral. In fact, I flew him up in my plane to his mother's funeral in Thohoyandou. So I knew that he wasn't an illegal immigrant. But what had happened was, unfortunately, his ID book, his name was spelled wrong. His ID book was spelled Ramango instead of Romano. And he explained that to me as being because when he was born, his mother went to the police station to register his birth. And she gave the name, and the policeman who wrote down the name wrote down Romango instead of Romano. So, but he knew that he was a Romano, not a Romango. So after that, he had to rectify. But in the meantime, this reporter then accused me of being a shareholder of Protea Security or being a shareholder of Velopanda. And I said, no, that's rubbish. He said, I've got your bank statements here. Your bank statement shows that you received R500,000 last week or the week before.
Did you receive R500,000 from
Yeah, I just-
Velopande?
No, not from, I'd sold some shares.
Okay.
So
To
I mean,
Velopande?
no, I had
Okay.
nothing to do with Velopande. I'd sold some unit trusts, in fact, shares. I'd sold some unit trusts. So, you know, you buy and sell and, you know, that's how it works. So I had nothing to do with Velopanda at all. And so I said this to the journalist. And the next day, there was a headline in the Mail and Guardian that Mashuda Romano was arrested and detained for being a legal immigrant. And by the way, in the morning, I got a phone call from Mashudu. He said, they've just released me.
And this is about 23 years ago.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, hang on. That was 2001.
Yes, about
25
25 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or 24 years ago, because it was, I think, October 2001.
Okay.
And he said, they've just released me. And I said, thank God, I've been trying to get hold of you. I said, thank God, I've been trying to get hold of you. What happened? And then he gave me this explanation that I've just given you now about the Romango, the Romano, and so on and so forth.
Your role at this point, you'd been now at EXA for a couple of months. How involved was your role? I mean, you started, you've testified that you basically did an audit of all the contracts, and you found that there were irregularities. You cancelled a number of the contracts.
So it was one big contract.
But you mentioned a number of others that were also
That
quite.
was equipment then.
Yeah.
That wasn't a contract, that was a tender.
Okay. My question, Mr. O'Sullivan, is basically leading to your role. How involved was your role at EXA? How much time did you require in order to execute all the things that you were doing?
Well, I hit the ground running and I spent literally 7 days a week there doing this. And unfortunately, the airports regrettably were in a mess. If I had to tell you, in the first 4 months of my being at Airports Company, we had multiple robberies, including airside robberies, where bandits came into the airport and held up people that were unloading cash and diamonds from a KLM flight. $26 million was stolen from a Swiss air flight. And this was causing chaos because the people in the outside world were starting to say, well, hang on a minute. Look at all these heists going on at the airport. And of course, unfortunately, they were all happening at Joburg Airport.
And this was during your role specifically at EXA as head of security. And at paragraph 29 of your statement, you say that by 2001, although I was a senior executive at EXA, I still maintained my role as a reservist at the Border Police as the work was complementary. You've just testified that your role was 7 days a week and it was very involved. You hit the ground running. How did you manage to balance your role as an executive at EXA and still provide volunteer work as a reservist at the Border Police?
Well, probably that's easy to explain because my Border Police work was at Johannesburg Airport. And 99%, so we kept records of where the security incidents took place over the 10 airports. And 99% of all the security incidents were taking place at Johannesburg Airport. So I knew that if I could fix Johannesburg Airport, I would fix the problems at all the airports. And I suppose you can say this, in fact, I've used the expression, the work was complementary. So being a police reservist, I'm wearing 2 hats now because I'm also seeing through two sets of eyes. I'm seeing what I would see as a policeman. I'm also seeing now as a security specialist. And I'm now starting to say, aha, one way to solve this problem is we put security controls in on these doors with card readers. And now people won't be able to open and close those doors without having proper identity systems in place. So it complemented itself like that.
Honorable Skosana.
Chair, thank you. Mr. Oliver, I just want you to clear this up. Earlier, you said that you were appointed as well because 3 airports were national key points, am I right?
Right.
And you are now a national key point official.
Correct.
Without being vetted.
Well, I think at that stage, they didn't require vetting. It only came later.
National key point.
Yes. At that time, National Key Points Act did not require the people to be vetted.
And anyway, I won't be surprised. I'll just make a comment on that. I mean, you had no any qualification, formal education when you were appointed as a group executive. Am I right?
Well, there were no qualifications in the field of aviation security other than the ICAO certificate, which I had.
Yeah, no. Because it's a clarity question. I'll ask you tomorrow. What I'm saying is, remember, we agreed earlier that the post was advertised. That's what you said.
Correct.
And the requirements, you don't know, you don't remember what were the requirements?
26 years ago, there was an advertisement. A person had to be competent at the job and had to demonstrate a proven knowledge of aviation security. I can't remember what else.
Yeah, it's fine because remember that they recruited you from property development and tourism company. You had no experience of that. And as well,
No,
earlier,
sorry, just
you had no experience of security.
Yes, I had experience of security.
That forensic security you're talking about, your company.
Pardon?
Your company. The experience was from your company.
Airports company, you mean?
No. I'm saying the experience you had, was it from your own company?
Chairman, I had worked as a country manager for Chubb Security.
Yes, I'm aware. It says so, yes. Yeah, and you were running your property development company and the tourism company.
Well,
At the same time.
The tourism company's chairman were non-executive positions.
Yes.
I wasn't running those companies. They would have had executives that ran those companies. I had a non-executive position where I was invited to contribute because of my knowledge in the tourism industry.
Yeah, no, it's fine. We are talking more about this. What I'm saying to you, what I want to put it to you, when I want a clarity on this one. Remember, you said to us that some of your people you trained, the 1,500 people, some went to PAL, college or what? Am I right?
No, I went to PAL.
Only you.
It might have been some of the others who went there, but they did their training in Johannesburg.
But at the later stage.
Okay.
I wanted that only for you to say to us that the each which is asking you. Now, I think on paragraph 29, where you said you put up 70 hours and 80 hours at border policing, between board roles, it doesn't make sense.
Why not?
You said there were 13 airports, am I right?
No, 10 airports.
10 airports, yes, the 3 were. And now you were able to run that as well and the border.
I worked 70 to 80 hours a week. By the way, still do.
When?
Okay, honorable member, let's proceed.
It's fine. We'll see tomorrow, Chair. Thank you.
Honorable Malem.
Thanks, Chair. The evidence leader is leaving a very important point. She tried to ask you about Chegi's levy in relation to the cancellation of that big contract.
Mm-hmm.
And you have not said anything except that funny things started happening to you, and policemen that are reporting to him, I would imagine, it's a national commissioner police report to him, went to arrest Ramano And they said, no, it's an illegal foreign. So I don't know. I don't see where does Jackie Slave get in relation to this cancellation of this contract.
Okay, I'll repeat what I said earlier, Chairman, which is that Jackie Salebi attended a meeting which had been arranged by Andre Price, who at the time was the Deputy National Commissioner for Operations. And the purpose of the meeting was to inform AXA that this is after we sent a letter of cancellation to Kusalani Security. It was like 3 days later. The purpose of the meeting was to inform us that he, Jackie Salebi, was going to arrange for the cabinet to take a decision to move the National Key Points Act responsibility from army to police. And because of that, he wanted a situation where the current incumbent, namely Kusalani Security, would not be fired, but they would still be in place. Their contract would not be terminated. So as a result of that, as I said earlier, we had a meeting internally in AXA, and a decision was taken that we could not accede to that request for a number of reasons. And the main reason being that they were undersupplying on the posts, they were committing fraud, they were committing corruption, and they were leaving gates open, and they were allowing major security issues to take place.
No,
at the
I
airport.
understand that. I want to know, did Jackie Slave say with his mouth, do not cancel a Kusalani security contract in
Yes.
that meeting?
Yes.
What evidence do we have about that?
It was a meeting. I didn't record it. I
The
didn't.
minutes?
Pardon?
Are the minutes of that meeting?
There were letters sent. I mean, 25 years ago, I don't have those letters now.
No, not letters. In
No,
the
there were
meeting.
letters sent confirming what he had said and confirming that AXA had taken a decision to go ahead and cancel the contract anyway.
And then the last question from me, you never had a vetting certificate to be such a senior person dealing with aviation security at a national key point.
There was no legal requirement for a vetting certificate at that time.
That's fine, but you never had a vetting.
I never had one because there was no legal requirement for one.
No, that's fine. Whether legal requirement or not, you never had a vetting.
As I said,
You were never vetted in your entire life.
as I said, I never had a vetting because there was no legal requirement.
Okay. Okay. Can we
So,
proceed?
thank you,
Awesome.
Chairperson. We are at paragraph 33 of your statement. You say that subsequently your contract was terminated from AXA. What was the reason for the termination of your contract?
Because Jackie Salebi had intimated, well, he had gone to NICOC or NICOC, I don't know how you say it, and they had changed the rules, and anybody that sat on the National Aviation Security Committee would have to have a security clearance of secret. And I would not be able to get such a security clearance because I had dual nationalities. So I could no longer sit on the National Aviation Security Committee. And as a result of no longer being able to sit on the National Aviation Security Committee, and as a result of the representations that Mr. Salebi made to the new CEO of AXA, a decision was taken, not by the chairman. The chairman tried to stop the decision from being taken, but he was now non-executive because we had a CEO now. A decision was taken to give me 3 months' notice and terminate my position.
So you were terminated, your contract was terminated because you did not have security clearance.
Yes, and
Okay.
because Jackie Salebi had had secret meetings with the new CEO and agreed, they looked at my contract, she got a lawyer involved, and the lawyer advised her that there's a clause in his contract that says you can give him 3 months' notice, and that's what happened.
But it was, the reason was due to you not having security clearance.
Correct.
Okay, we can move on. After leaving AXA, how did your understanding of Mr. Celebi's corrupt relationship with Mr. Glenn Agliotti develop?
So, whilst we were in the border police, this is before I joined AXA. So, I remember an incident. It must have been,
Just specifically the relationship between Mr. Celebi and
that's what I'm talking about.
Glenn Agliotti, if we can
Yes.
just limit
So,
it to that.
While I was in the border police, we had a consignment of counterfeit goods that came in, and the consignment of counterfeit goods was being brought in by Glenn Agliotti.
If you could be specific about what those counterfeit goods were?
They were, I call them tackies, but they're running shoes. Converse was the manufacturer's name, but they were counterfeit. They were not real Converse, and they were polo shirts, golf shirts. And they were listed on the waybill as being secondhand clothing for charitable distribution to previously disadvantaged communities. But when the container was opened, it was found to be brand new Converse shoes and polo shirts, which were allegedly secondhand clothing from China.
Okay. Besides the clothing, was there any involvement of narcotics, drugs, along the lines of the things that you were specifically looking after at the airport, which you have mentioned?
No.
No.
No. Later, I found out about that, but that would have been a few years later.
Okay. So you were still describing the relationship and how you uncovered it.
Yes. So what happened was, after my role at AXA had been terminated, I became aware of the fact, in fact, I became aware of the fact before my role was terminated. I laid a formal complaint with what was then called the ICD, which was, ICD stood for the Independent Complaints Directorate. And I laid a formal complaint with the ICD whilst I was still working at AXA against Jackie Celebi for interfering in the contractual relationships between AXA and the contractor. And when the new CEO started, I was called in and told I must withdraw that complaint.
Did you withdraw it?
No, I refused to withdraw the complaint. And the reason I refused to withdraw the complaint was because I believed the complaint was valid. And I was then unlawfully suspended.
But at this point, Mr. O'Sullivan, with all due respect, you've now been terminated. Your contract has been terminated.
Before I was terminated, I was unlawfully suspended.
Okay, but we are now at the point, I'm sorry to interject. I don't mean to rush you. It's just time is not on our side. In the timeline of where we are in the testimony, you have left AXA and you are now investigating Mr. Celebi, even though you've left AXA. And that's where we are in the testimony. If you could just expand on that.
Okay, so Chairman, after I left AXA, I went back and carried on with my property developments. Actually, I was still involved with that anyway. I started building houses for sale again. This developed, I think, 2 developments in Bedford View, and I built some houses in Kempton Park and some others in Dainfern. But while I was doing all that, I decided to look into Jackie Celebi because I was aware, I had no evidence, but I was aware of this relationship between him and Noel Ngwenya.
Him and?
Noel Ngwenya.
Okay.
He was the CEO of Kusalani Security. And I considered that a corrupt relationship. So I arranged a meeting with, I'd made this complaint with ICD, first of all. Secondly, after leaving AXA, I lodged a formal complaint with what was then called the Scorpions. I had a meeting with the Scorpions in Silverton, in Pretoria, and I provided them with all the information that I had. And they told me, yeah, it doesn't look good, but there's no prima facie evidence there. If you find any evidence, come back and tell us and we'll have another look. So I decided to go out and look for evidence. And I got that evidence. And the first evidence I got was I got a phone call from a captain in the police at Sandton Police Station. And he told me that there'd been a robbery at a house, like a townhouse, you know, a luxury townhouse in School Road in Morningside. And that the person that had been robbed, his next door neighbor, was a guy called Glenn Agliotti. And when this captain went there, he went into the next door neighbor's house, which was Glenn Agliotti's house, because the house where the robbery had taken place was being treated as a crime scene. So the captain went into that house and he met with this person. And then while he was talking to this person and taking a sworn statement from him, Glenn Agliotti was talking to somebody on the phone and he handed this captain the phone. He said, "Here, it's the Commissioner of Police. He wants to speak to you." And the captain in question spoke on the phone with the Commissioner of Police, which was Jackie Celebi. And Jackie Celebi told him, and that's what he put into a sworn statement.
What was the name of the captain?
Sure. I can't remember.
Do we have any supporting evidence
Yes, I don't
to
have
that
it, but it's
effect?
on the docket.
Okay.
So the Scorpions obviously ran with the investigation because it wasn't just that. There were a number of things that came together. So we had, first of all, that situation.
And that's what you uncovered basically in your investigation, that he was
That was the
involved
first-
with
That was the
Agliotti.
first thing.
Okay.
So what Jackie Celebi told the captain was, look after this fellow Glenn Agliotti. He's a close personal friend of mine. I then remembered that several years earlier, when I was in the border police before joining AXA, that we'd had this consignment of clothing, this
What you described earlier.
yes, the counterfeit goods. And we had detained the goods and I'd arrested Glenn Agliotti. And you then leave it. And the next thing
You had arrested him as a reservist? I'm just
yes,
in that capacity. Okay.
yes.
Okay, and we,
And I
Honorable Nomvalo.
Yeah, no, thanks, Chair. No, Mr. O'Sullivan, may you please extricate me from this confusion? Earlier, when I asked you about security clearance, you confirmed that you did not have it. And then when the council asked you
leave that copy.
about your dismissal, you said, should I wait for you? Can I proceed?
Thank you.
When the council asked you about your dismissal, and then you confirmed that you were dismissed by Jackie Celebi, by Mr. Jackie Celebi, because you had no security clearance. And the justification, according to your logic, for not having a clearance, a security clearance, is that there was no legal requirement at the time. Is that correct?
So almost correct.
Yeah. Now, what precipitates my confusion here is that I find it very ironic that Mr. Celebi can dismiss you on the basis of a requirement which is not prescribed by the law.
So Chairman, I can explain that. First of all, Jackie Celebi didn't dismiss me.
No, terminated your contract.
He didn't terminate my contract. My contract wasn't a contract with the police. My
Yes.
contract was a contract with Airports Company South Africa. And what happened was Jackie Celebi first attempted to have the National Key Points Act changed so that the National Key Points would report to the police. And the next thing he did, he went to NICOC, and he got them to change the regulations so that everybody that sat on the National Aviation Security Committee would have to have security clearance. So they brought in a new regulation. And I couldn't meet that regulation because I didn't have security clearance.
So it became a requirement
It became a requirement
at a
after-
later stage.
Yes, after I was
So at the time when you were appointed, it was not a requirement.
correct.
That is your logic.
That's a fact.
Oh, thank you, Chair.
I want us to take a break, Kawazela, at what time?
I think this part is almost done. So I think we should be done by past to take a break.
Okay.
Mr. O'Sullivan, if I can just then maybe just to wrap up this part of your evidence, you say that, I'll just read it into the record. Under Celebi, this is at paragraph 37. Under Celebi, the police was effectively captured by the criminal underworld. I'll give you an opportunity to just give your final comment. With many criminals having friends in the police to keep them out of prison, the growing trail of evidence and media exposés were starting to take their toll on the relationship between Celebi and President Thabo Mbeki. This is very similar to what has been testified regarding the events that led up to the 6th of July. The narrative is quite similar. However, in 2006 and 2007, President Thabo Mbeki tried to help Celebi in the return of securing his own political future in Polokwane. And it goes on, it can be read into the record. The question that I have specifically in relation to that paragraph, just to be, for the sake of completion, you then go on to say that prior to December 2007, there was a coordinated effort by President Mbeki and an overseas-based agent, Mr. Andre Pienaar, to save Celebi on the one hand, yet arrest and charge Zuma on the other hand. They failed. President Mbeki and Pienaar's plans fell apart at the ANC elective conference in Polokwane. And you complete your paragraph by stating that the disbanding of Scorpions was intended to curtail high-profile corruption investigations, particularly with regard to those near and dear to the senior politicians. My question for you in respect of that paragraph 37, it's quite convoluted and a lot can be said about that paragraph, is how did your in your view, what was the impact of Mr. Celebi's tenure as commissioner on the integrity of police and services?
Chairman, I became aware of appointments that were being made in the police of individuals being promoted into positions that they weren't suitable for. For example, Richard Ndluli was made the national head of crime intelligence. There were other appointments. I can't remember the names of the people now, but people were being appointed that weren't qualified. And I think it became apparent that from the evidence and the statements I took, that these things were happening because we had a corrupt chief of police. So I intensified I didn't believe that South Africa would benefit from having a corrupt chief of police. And I also didn't believe it would be in the interests of South Africa to have a corrupt police chief allowed to continue in return for arresting and charging a person that had aspirations to become the president of the country. For example, Jacob Zuma. And I felt that this kind of activity cried out for intervention. So I stepped up my investigations, and the rest is history. I managed to get sworn statements from witnesses linking Glenn Agliotti to drug trafficking, linking Glenn Agliotti to counterfeit cigarette importation from Zimbabwe and linking Glen Agliotti to payments being made to Jackie Celebi.
How did you specifically uncover the drug trafficking that Agliotti was involved with?
No,
Could you
sorry-
expand?
Sorry, Chair, before that. On a point of correction, Richard Mdluli came head of crime intelligence under President Zuma and Natim Teto, not under President Mbeki.
Sorry, Chairman, Richard Mdluli was appointed not National Head of Crime Intelligence. Thank you for assisting me there. He was appointed Provincial Head of Crime Intelligence in Gauteng by Jackie Celebi. Thank you for pointing that out to me.
Just for the purposes of the committee, at page 74 of the annexures, it's B74, you have enclosed a report which details the specific persons that you say were involved in the various criminal activities. However, my question to you at this stage is, you say that you uncovered drug trafficking.
Correct.
In the timeline where we are, you have left your role as head of security at AXA. You are now back in business and also doing reservist work.
No,
Yes.
I
Okay.
was no longer reservist, Chair, because Jackie Celebi terminated my role as a police reservist. And he inspired the need to terminate my role as head of aviation security. So I had no police work after that.
What were you doing at the time?
Property development.
You say that you were investigating various things. Why were you investigating as a property developer?
Because I wanted to live in a country where there was a rule of law. I wanted to live in a country where a person who did his job well wouldn't be fired because somebody wants to commit the offense of corruption without being caught. I wanted to live in a country where security contracts were not given to the person that paid the highest bribe, but they were given to the company best suited to provide the service. And that would make the airport safe. I didn't want to live in a country where something tragic should happen, for example, like 911. I didn't want to live in a country where you could go to the police station to open a case and the criminal that committed the offense would get away with it because he paid a bribe to the police. I realized by 2003 that we were on a slippery slope, and the best way to get off that slippery slope was to bring back some ethics into the police.
Yeah. You were at the point, I actually derailed you by asking a different question, but you were about to explain what you uncovered, how you uncovered. It's not necessarily specifically about Glen Agliotti, but it's more about your investigative work into drug trafficking. And you were about to expand on how you managed to uncover drug trafficking, which Glen Agliotti had been involved in.
Yes, Chairman, obviously you get somebody phones you, gives you information. I think it became common knowledge that I was looking into Jackie Celebi. And you sniff around and you get information, but you can't prove anything. But somebody gave me a tip-off that actually, if you want information, this fellow Glen Agliotti is involved in drug trafficking, and this is how he does it. But I had no evidence. So I decided to go and get that evidence. And I was given the name of the company and the name of the person that managed the company that imported the narcotics and distributed the narcotics. So once I had that information, I then realized, well, hang on a minute. I can go to that company and see if they can provide evidence. So I arranged a meeting. It just coincidentally happened.
It sounds like you stumbled upon that
Yes,
evidence, but in
Yes.
fact, you were investigating the former commissioner.
correct.
Okay.
So it just so happened that when I was a police reservist, I had been running a drug-free schools project in my spare time. And that drug-free schools project resulted in us, a team of us, going around all the schools and explaining to the children how drugs are bad for you.
When did you start that project?
That would have been the mid-90s.
Whilst you were a reservist?
Correct.
Okay.
And one of the schools I went to was Houghton Primary School. We went to a lot of schools. We felt it was important not just to focus on high schools, but to also focus on primary schools, because primary school leavers become high school students. And whilst there's probably not much drugs being sold at primary schools, once they get to a high school, the drugs are being sold there. And we decided that the best thing to do is start with one level of education for the primary schools and another one for the high schools. And obviously the education for the high schools was more age relevant, and the education for the primary schools was also age relevant. And as a result of this interaction with the primary schools, one of the schools I went to, I mentioned, was Houghton Primary School. And the headmaster there happened to be the brother of the father of the guy that was running the transport company that was moving Glenn Agliotti's drugs around.
What was the name of the person who was moving the drugs around?
Anthony Dormel.
Okay.
So I arranged a meeting with Anthony Dormel's father, which is Chris Dormel. And we had a meeting at their house, be about 20 years ago, maybe more. And we had a meeting at the house. And when I had that first meeting, I suggested that I would like to have a meeting with the son. And I explained to them exactly why. That I'd want this son to understand what's happening with the stuff that he's moving around. Now, we had that meeting and he agreed that actually he always suspected that there was something wrong, but he didn't know what. And he agreed to set out chapter and verse. And as a result, we went to a shipment that he had stored at a warehouse on the East Rand. And there was about 200 million rands worth of drugs there.
What did you do with that information? Once you got to the scene, what was your first reaction?
My first reaction was to take a sworn statement from the guy, because what you always like to do is make sure you get something in writing.
Okay, so you got a sworn statement, and what was the next step?
Then I went back to the Scorpions, who I'd met with a couple of years earlier, and I said, listen, I think we've now got something.
So you reported this drug bust to the Scorpions?
They did the drug bust. I didn't do the drug bust.
Okay. So you accompanied the Scorpions to a venue where there was an operation undergoing?
No, I didn't do that either.
Okay.
What I did was, I showed them the sworn statement I had from this individual, and I asked them, would they be prepared to meet with this individual and take this matter over? And they agreed to do that. And then I introduced them. We had a meeting at McDonald's in Bruma. Not Bruma, East Rand Mall. We had a meeting at McDonald's in East Rand Mall. And that would have been about 95, maybe 96. I can't remember the exact year. And we had a meeting there, and we sat there for 4.5 hours, where they interrogated this fellow. And
what is the outcome?
They made a decision to mount an operation.
Okay.
And the operation they mounted lasted for a month or two. And then they busted them and they arrested them all. And then they arrested Glenn Agliotti.
And what was the final, the ultimate consequence for Mr. Selebi?
The ultimate consequence for Mr. Selebi was that he was convicted of 6 counts of corruption and sentenced to 15 years in prison.
From the investigations that you would have conducted, what did you actually discover?
How do you mean? What did I?
What did you just, what came out of your investigations? You said that all of these things that you've been testifying about are things that were on this, like almost on the side. It's not what you were necessarily investigating. The person that you were after was Silebi. But we've spoken about the various things that have came out of the investigations, but not specifically linking to Commissioner Silebi.
Yes, so what happened was I was getting some challenges, shall we say. I got a tip off that there would be an attempt on my life, that I would be murdered. So I started taking more precautions. And then I got a tip off that actually, you know, they decided they couldn't get to me, so they would murder my family. So I moved my family out of the country. And that was in 1996. And then the Scorpions, through their investigation, had dealt with the drugs, the 200 million rands worth of drugs. They'd arrested a number of people. Some of them pleaded guilty and went to prison. They arrested and charged Glenn Agliotti, and they arrested and charged another gentleman by the name of Clinton Nassif. And they entered into plea bargain agreements where they agreed to plead guilty in terms of Section 105A of the Criminal Procedures Act. They agreed to plead guilty and get a suspended sentence and then give evidence about other activities. And the other activities they gave evidence about were the payments that they had made to Jackie Silebi.
Okay. At page 14, at the top of your statement, you say, based on the case I had assembled against him, speaking about Silebi, the then President Kgalema Motlanthe terminated Silebi's contract. In 2010, Silebi was convicted and sentenced to 15 years. This sentence, this paragraph implies that it was as a result of the investigation that you had conducted against Mr. Silebi.
Yeah,
Is that correct?
Perhaps that's a little bit too much, because in fact, what I had done, I carried out an investigation which triggered the production of the evidence which led to Jackie Silebi being arrested and charged.
Okay.
So if it's like anything else, I had started work which became the catalyst for the criminal charges which he faced.
What was the motivation for you investigating him?
As I said earlier, Chairman, I wanted to live in a country where there's a rule of law. I didn't want to live in a country where a chief of police could be so corrupt that he could enter into an agreement that would assist a sitting president to arrest and charge a future possible president. Because I felt that that was like completely wrong, regardless of what and at the time, I didn't know the then who became President Zuma, I didn't know him from a bar of soap. So I had no knowledge.
Would it be fair to say that as a result of Mr. Silebi not granting you security clearance, you then investigated him? What would your comment be to that statement?
Yeah, I think that's not correct. And the reason it's not correct is because it's like a domino effect, isn't it? If you don't do this, this will happen, then that will happen, then that will happen, then that will happen. He was going behind my back and having secret meetings with a view to having me dismissed. Why? Because we refused to kowtow to this idea of allowing his friend. In fact, I went a step further. The criminal case I opened against his friend resulted in his friend going to prison for 5 years. So he just badly wanted me out of the way. And because of the lawlessness of that conduct over 2 or 3 years, I just decided, no, the country doesn't need a commissioner of police who's involved in that type of criminal activity. So I took it upon myself to do the preliminary investigations. And when I handed it to the Scorpions on a plate in 1990, whatever, 5 or 6, there were prima facie evidence, but there was more than that.
Would you say there's a relationship between Commissioner Selebi's arrest and the disbandment of the Scorpions?
I'd say absolutely, without a doubt. Part of the problem, Chairman, is that the Police Service Act makes it clear that no police official may be an active politician. And at the time Jackie Selebi was the Commissioner of Police, he was also a member of the National Executive Committee of the ANC. So now suddenly the rules relating to the Police Service Act were being flouted. And not only that, you heard about all these so-called spy tapes. And the spy tapes make it clear that there was a concerted effort on the part of certain persons, one of them being the then head of the Scorpions, a chap by the name of Leonard McCarthy. Because the spy tapes show his conversations with a person by the name of Andre Pienaar, who was based in London. It demonstrated that their plan, and they used code words, but it was all unpacked quite nicely. And they used these code words to show that actually we must get Selebi off the hook and get Zuma on the hook. And in the process, the problem they had was this individual by the name of O'Sullivan. And in those spy tapes, it states categorically, let's not worry about O'Sullivan. We'll bring somebody in that will deal with him decisively. Now, I thought, wow, this is heavy stuff. So I felt that, no, I did the right thing. The country should benefit from a police service with an honest chief of police. And that's what I expected to see. Because if you have an honest chief of police and a hardworking chief of police, you would expect that the people, that the whole thing ripples down and you have a good police service.
Thank you, Mr. O'Sullivan. Lastly, you say that you got this information from spy tapes, but you were no longer a police reservist. You were also no longer the head of security at AXA. In what capacity were you able to access these spy tapes?
No, well, I didn't access the spy tapes. What happened was, I'm trying to remember her name now. Nomkhobo Jiba. She was the acting national director of public prosecutions. And after Jackie Selebi had been arrested, she was suspended. And she was suspended before his trial had got cracking. She had been suspended. Now, we have to turn the clock back a little bit, because before Jackie Selebi had been criminally charged, they had gone to see the president. The Scorpions had gone to see the president to say, we have a warrant of arrest for the Commissioner of Police. It wasn't the Scorpions, sorry. It was the National Director of Public Prosecutions, a gentleman by the name of Vusi Pakoli. And he went to see the president together with Garinal, who was the provincial head of the Scorpions. And they went to see the president and they said, we have this warrant which has been issued. And before we execute the warrant, we wanted to inform you as a courtesy that we intend to arrest the Commissioner of Police. And Thabo Mbeki then had a meeting with Bridget Bandler, who was the Minister for Justice. And the Minister of Justice immediately suspended Vusi Pakoli. And then after this suspension, the provincial head of crime intelligence was instructed by Jackie Selebi to start tapping the phones.
Mr. O'Sullivan, I really apologize for interrupting you. Where can I find this information? Do we have evidence to that effect where these meetings took place? Do you have minutes to that effect?
So, Chairman, it's common cause. I'm sorry to have to say, but if you go back in time, it was all over the newspapers. It's common cause that Vusi Pikali was suspended, pending an inquiry to determine his fitness to be in office. It's common cause that this all happened in a very short period of time. You had the Polokwane conference, then you had the immediately after the Polokwane conference, President Mbeki was still the president.
Thank you, Mr. O'Sullivan. Just to bring you back to what the question actually was, the question was, how did you get to know about the conversations that were where spyware was used? That was the specific question.
They were published in the media.
Okay, thank you.
I think either the Mail and Guardian or the Times. They were
Thank you.
published and they quoted from it.
So you read them in the media?
And not only that, I spoke to the journalist
Okay.
and he sent me a copy of the tapes, not the tapes, but the transcript of the tapes, because they.
But that your source basically was the media. That was the
Correct.
question. Thank you. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you so much, Abazel. Honorable members, let me take this opportunity to recognize the following honorable members who have joined us, who have come to support the work that the committee is doing. Honorable Mautwe, the Chief Whip of the EFF in the National Assembly. Honorable Noluchungu, Honorable Mkalipi, Honorable Matiase, Honorable Nehaus, Honorable Ntangwini, and Honorable Makisini, the Chief Whip of the EFF in the NCOP. I recognize you, Honorable Kobe, from Action SA, and we want to thank you so much for the support that you are giving to the committee. Honorable members, you were with us in the morning, Honorable Mkalipi, and you still found it reasonable to come back in the afternoon. We want to thank you so much. We are going to take a break now. And thank you so much, Advocate Mkhize, for leading evidence in the latter part of the session. We are going to take a break and we will come back for the final session, which will run from 18 hours until 19 hours. And I'm going to plead with honorable members that you can see that we are moving at a snail pace. And what this does is it reduces our time for interaction with the witness tomorrow. We are still on paragraph 38 of 175 paragraphs statement. And this does not bode well for us. If we can still try and allow the evidence leaders to run through the statement so that tomorrow we have sufficient time to engage with the witness. May we please rise and leave the chambers and come back at 6 o'clock.